Hey everybody, welcome back. In this video, I'm going to discuss some hair and scalp disorders. Of course, I won't be mentioning all of them, there's just so many. Rather, I have chosen a couple that I feel are the most common. First, I want to go over the stages of hair growth. Well, there are about 4 of them, those being first the anagen phase, followed by the catagen phase, the telogen phase, and then the last one being the exogen phase. The anagen phase is a growth stage. This can last a few years, but I'll talk more about that in a few seconds. This next is the catagen phase, and this is a brief transition period only lasting a few days until it reaches the telogen phase. This is a resting period of the hair, and the hair starts losing its blood supply, finally entering the exogen phase, or what's otherwise known as the shedding phase. Now, 80% of our hair is in the growth phase at any given time, and the rest of it is either in the transitioning phase or the shedding phase. But just an interesting point, we lose about an average of 100 to 150 hairs a day. We are born with vellus hair, also known more often as peach fuzz. It usually doesn't grow very long, sometimes it's barely even noticeable. Often it's light colored, mostly due to a lack of melanocytes, cells that produce pigment. The follicles out of which vellus hair grows will not have any sebaceous glands attached to it. Also, the vellus hair does not contain a medulla. A child's body is covered in vellus hair, except for palms, bottom of the feet, behind the ears. But as we get older, we lose a lot of the vellus hair, and some of it gets replaced with what we call terminal hair. Now, terminal hair replaces some of the vellus hair. Of course, as we get older, hair on your head or pubic hair is all terminal. It usually, but not always, has a medulla in its center along with the melanocytes that produce its hair color. It will grow for as long as the anagen phase will let it. If the anagen phase, for example, is between 2 to 3 years, your hair will probably not grow any longer than just about to your shoulders or a little bit lower. However, when your anagen phase lasts it can last from anywhere from 4 to 10 years on average. But one doesn't need to look too far onto Google, and we can see just how long some people's anagen phase can last. And wow, what a length of hair. Now, on the opposite end of the scale, I'm going to be going over some of the common conditions such as hair loss. I'm going to go over why who gets it, why it happens, and is there anything that can really be done about it. Now, 20% of all American population is plagued with some form of hair loss. Interestingly, though, the Czech Republic, they have the highest percentage of the male population on the planet that has bald heads. In fact, 43% of all men in the Czech Republic have a problem with male pattern baldness. Now, hair loss affects both male and females. It usually starts with something like, "Hey Eddie, my hair seems to be thinning a little," and then we go from there. Now, one type of hair loss that affects both genders is called alopecia areata. It can appear as bald patches. It's an autoimmune disorder. You see, what happens here is that the body's white blood cells attack the follicle, causing it to shrink. The body actually sees the hair follicle as a foreign body and will attack it. There appears to be a strong genetic connection with this, and if there's a close family member with another similar affliction, that family, 1 in 5, will most likely have some degree of alopecia. Now, there's no cures as of yet, but there are some treatments available to help manage the disease. The current treatment of this ranges anywhere from corticosteroid injections to corticosteroid topical creams. There's minoxidil. It's another treatment option, but it's only good for small areas. Minoxidil is a medication that's widely used to treat hair loss, and it's not fully understood how it works, but it acts as a vasodilator, and it helps to open up the potassium channels. And the thought is that this will it's thought that the increase in the blood flow to the follicle will help to provide more nutrients and oxygen to the hair via the dermal papilla. And of course, that's the blood supply that goes into the follicle. This is androgenic alopecia. It's most often recognized as male pattern baldness. A receding hairline can begin in the early 20s, along with a loss of hair from the crown area. Again, minoxidil is the current preferred treatment for this type of hair loss. Now, females, they can also suffer from this type of loss, only it looks a little bit different than the males do. Alopecia totalis is total hair loss on the scalp. This is more severe than areta or the androgenic. Like the other alopecia hair loss, there is no known cause. However, there does seem to be a link between stress and certain types of medications, diet changes, certain illnesses, and then that leads us right into the most severe type, and that is the alopecia universalis. Now, this is total body hair loss. This can affect anyone at any age. Again, there's no known cause or cure. However, there is ongoing studies and research to help people regain some hair again. As a side note, hypothermia is of more of a concern for individuals who have complete body hair loss, because hairs on your body will trap in heat, even though it might be on a small level, but with those who have this, they tend to get cold rather quickly. So as with all types of hair loss, there's quite psychological effects that can be very crippling. I know of someone who she had lost her hair when she was 16, going through high school, and her hair began to fall out. She had natural long hair. It was growing thick and full all the way down her back, and it started coming out more and more each time she would either brush it or wash it out. And before long, she had no hair left anywhere. So 20 years later, sadly, she still hasn't regained any of her hair, but she has learned to cope with the some of the psychological and emotional issues that carries with it. The next type of hair loss is called anagen effluvium. This refers to hair shedding that arises during the anagen phase. Now remember, normally the hair grows during this phase. So in this case, it starts falling out before it has ended its full growth cycle. Now sometimes in these cases, external factors like chemotherapy, radiation therapy, oral contraceptives, vitamin A poisoning, chronic infections, and other chemicals, this can all lead to the abnormal ending of the anagen phase. If you have a client that is concerned about hair loss, after a brief consultation, you should recommend that they see their family doctor or dermatologist so they can start ruling out some of the more common causes. So dandruff plagues millions of people, both young and old. Nothing is more embarrassing than looking at your dark-colored jacket full of flakes on your shoulders. Well, dandruff is caused by a fungus that lives on everyone's head, and it is called malassezia. Sometimes it grows a lot more on some people than others, and the result gives you the flaky skin. Skin cells naturally exfoliate from the scalp, but where there's too much melancesia, those dead skin cells tend to proliferate at a much greater rate. So instead of there being just a few flakes that fall off the skin, the dead cells start to clump together and form much larger flakes. So what can we do about it? Well, we need to apply an antifungal medication, and that comes in the form of shampoo like Head & Shoulders. The specialized shampoo contains ingredients such as pyrithione zinc, selenium sulfide, or ketoconazole. These shampoos bring melancesia to a much more desirable level so as not to create so much of the dead skin. Your client may tell you that it's not dandruff, but rather a dry scalp. Well, how can you tell the difference? Well, dry skin gives off smaller flakes, and it's usually accompanied with an itchy scalp. Talking with your client about some of these issues may be difficult. Whether it is dandruff or about hair loss, inform your client that there are things that can be done, that you know of possible treatment options. Always direct them to their doctor to further discuss tests and treatments. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for watching. I hope that you have found this to be informative, and please don't forget to like and subscribe.